Greetings, and we are in Maya 2016 today, and we're going to look at how to make advanced shapes. In the previous video, we made some basic shapes in Maya 2016 without following any real rhyme or reason for design. In this one, we're going to look at how to make shapes with a proper topology or edge flow in mind. Whenever you're making polygons, I'm going to go ahead and add a plane in here for the moment, and I'll press the F key to zoom in. Whenever you're working with polygons, it's important to consider what shapes you are making. As you can see, each one of these little sections here is represented by a square, or in this case, a quad. Polygons prefer quads over any other shape because they're easier to work with. They have better edge flow, they have better workability, and that sort of thing. When we talk about edge flow, we're not talking about necessarily a line of any particular order. We're talking about from point to point on each one of these faces here. So this face lines up with this face, lines up with this face, lines up with this face. This would be considered a edge row. Okay. If I were to go this way, this is an edge row. If I were to select this face and then hold Shift and then double click, it'll select the whole row, because each one is lined up next to the other, and Maya can figure out where the next one is. But it doesn't do it diagonally. If I try to go from this one to this one, it doesn't have a clean path, because it goes to the point and it finds a an intersection here that it doesn't appreciate. I also can't go from here and say catty corner. It won't give me the same kind of result. So we're talking about edge flow. We're talking about working with quads and working with one edge cleanly next to another. So as we model, we're going to keep this in mind and make sure that we are working in quads. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. And I'm going to add in a new plane. And from here, I'm going to add in, let's say I'm going to drop my subdivisions down to 1 and 1. Of course, I am in my channel box. If you can't find your channel box, it's over here to the right. This little icon looks like 3 little pages. That turns the channel box on and off. If you ever happen to accidentally undock your channel box, you can just grab the tab, that's this little piece here, and go back toward. If you have any other boxes open, Maya will try to assimilate it just fine. If you have nothing open, then it'll need to get closer to the bar. Okay, so 1 and 1, here's my object, and I'm going to change its size once more to 20 and 20 and the width and height. Go ahead and zoom out. Then we'll add in my color. So up on my tab here, I'll go to rendering and drop in a Lambert. Come over to where it says Lambert 2. Now if you picked a different one, if you pick like Fong or whatever these are, you can always find the little name over here. If you're not sure, you also can right click and go down to Material Attributes. It'll also bring you here. Okay. Under color, I'm going to go to the checker box, and I'm going to go to File, and then it's going to change over here. I'll go to Folder, and in my downloads, I'm going to grab my Shapes Advanced. Now, this is included in the video, so if you want this in the description, you're welcome to download it from there. And I'll hit Open. To see it, I'll press 6. Once I create it, I'm going to go back to my channel box, and I'm going to go down to where it says Layers, and I will create layer from selected. Make sure you have your object selected. If it's not selected, this won't work. You also want to make sure it's in object mode, that it is highlighted in green, not blue. And select that, and I will change this third box to R for reference. So now I can't accidentally move it. If I want to move it, I have to uncheck the R. Okay. Go back to my top view. Just hover my mouse over. Again, if you can't find your top view, you can always hit this 4 view over here. It'll split this up for you. And then spacebar lets you go back in. 6 brings up my display again. And here I am. I have my starting point for my basic shape, or my more advanced shapes, I should say. We still have this triangle, but this is here to kind of throw you off. We're going to go to polygons. I'm going to add in a polygon plane. And the first shape I'm going to start with is the triangle, because this is going to be where things get a little bit weird. To zoom in, I'm just going to go ahead and hit the F key. And then I'm going to change my subdivisions down to 1 and 1. You can see that I have 4 points, but I have a triangle. In our previous video, we went ahead and selected vertex mode and then deleted one of these points. But since we're going to work in quads, we really don't want to delete the point. Instead, we're going to move everything where we would for it to be a triangle. And instead of deleting this point, we are going to move it into position, right? So this is technically a quad, even though it is shaped like a triangle. It does have 4 points. This particular arrangement is not really favorable in Maya. Maya prefers, if you're going to have a triangle, to have a triangle, not to squish a quad into a triangle. But to get to the hang of it, this is going to work for now. So 1, 2, 3, 4 points makes a triangle. Okay. I'm going to come over to my next shape here, and I have this little Z shape. To make this, I'm going to grab my plane. I'm going to zoom out so I can find it, move it into place. Change my subdivisions down to 1 and 1. And I'm going to go back, and as I'm looking at this, I want to start thinking in quads. Each one of these sections of this Z should count to 4 points. So if I start here, I got 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this part here will make 4 points. But if I count from the middle, 1, 2, 3, and 4, I also have 4 points. So I know from here to here, this would be 1 quad and the next quad. If I go to here, this last piece, 1, 2, 3, and 4, I will also have 4 points. So this Z is made up of 3 quads. So if I grab this, I'm going to go ahead and position it. And I can do this in a few ways. I can cut them in like I did before, or I can shape this up to have the correct number of subdivisions right away. And that's what I'm going to do in my channel box. I'm going to go to my channel box, go to Inputs and Polyplane. And for my subdivision in height, I'm going to add, let's see, we'll do 1, 2. So to do that, to do what I'm doing, all you gotta do is select the word. So I have subdivision height selected, and then I'm middle mouse clicking out on the canvas. And that allows me to drag and change this dynamically. So I'm gonna add 3 points, 1, 2, and down here you can see subdivision height 3. So I have my 3 quads, and now I have to arrange them. So I'm going to right click and go to vertex mode. Again, you can get there by also pressing F9. Select my first point, arrange it, next point up there. Let's move these out of the way. And as you're working, just be careful you don't turn this inside out. There's only one side to this plane, and if you turn it inside out, you can see how it's gray. If you turn it the other way, it'll be black. See that? This is inside out. The plane's been flipped. So just be conscious of that as you're working. Now move this piece into position. And the last one into position. So now I have my new plane. It's been shaped into the Z, and it has what we would consider okay edge flow. I wouldn't say decent edge flow, but this plane does line up with this one and does line up with that one. A little bit bent, but if I do the little trick where I select it and then double click, it should go around and select the whole thing. So that tells me that each edge is finding its neighbor. Okay, so there's our Z. The next shape in our list is going to be this little, how do you call that, little hatchet, or maybe it's a finger pointing. Go ahead and grab my plane, move it into position. And this one, yeah, you could do this as 2 quads. If you're not sure about that, just count the points. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1 quad. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the next quad. So I'm going to make this in my subdivisions. I'm going to do 1 and then 2. And here are my 2 quads. And now I have to arrange them. I'll go to vertex mode. First point goes here. Second point goes here. Third point, right there. Fourth one. Move this one here. And this one here. And there we have our two quads together. Fantastic. Okay, let's move on to something slightly harder. I'm going to go over to this little cross shape here. Our cross shape, it looks a little deceiving actually. But we actually have, if you count the empty spaces as a quad, we actually have 9 quads here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, each one of these being its own square. If I drop in the poly plane, go ahead and move it into position. And over my subdivisions, I choose 3 and 3. You'll see that I have 9 points, or 9 quads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All I have to do is move this into position and have the correct size. So where it says width and height, I'm going to go ahead and select both words here. That's just clicking and dragging. And then I'm going to middle mouse click out on my canvas. That's pushing in on the mouse wheel. And I will drag to my right, and you'll see that you can expand this. And there we go. So now this shape is pretty much done. All we have to do is subtract the pieces we don't need. To do that, I'm going to go into face selection. We've never done that before, so let's go ahead and do that. Right click, go to face selection, and we're going to go ahead and select the faces we don't need. So here's one, here's another, here's another, here's another. To select all 4, you can hold down the shift key and just click on the ones that you want. If you want to do it individually, you can do one at a time. Once you select the ones that you want to delete, press the delete key. And there we go, we have our cross. Now I said this one's going to be a bit tricky, and it was, because instead of making everything, we used our setup to do it for us. So instead of doing it by hand, we had to actually have the system do it, which was kind of nice. So moving on to this next shape, this is our big boss right here. To do that, it's actually very familiar to the cross. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. And here we go, we have that cross shape. Instead of making this again, I'm going to duplicate my cross. To do that, make sure you're in object mode. So go ahead and right click, make sure you're in object selection. And then we're going to make a copy of this. To do that, we're going to press Control and then the D key. So Control D. You'll see that this turns gray. It just means you have a duplicate. Go ahead and drag it over. And I will put it into position. Now, if you want to be perfect, you can hold down the X key. That'll change your little square icon in the center to a circle. It also toggles, if you look up here, it toggles this little horseshoe with the grid. That means grid snapping. And if you hold that and then drag toward the grid, it will snap it to the center for you. And you can see, snapped right to the center, that this is lined up almost perfectly. Zoom in a little bit more just to make it easier to see. And from here, I'm going to start changing this shape. So we have this square, but we have these round petals, right? So what that means is we have to add detail to our model. So I'm going to go grab my multi-cut tool. It's this little knife here. And all I'm going to do is start cutting on the center line. So I'm going to grab the center line. I'm going to go all the way across, grab the next center line. I'm going to right click. And that's going to give me this line in the middle, and it's going to allow me to start changing the shape of my petals. I'm going to go ahead and press W. I'm going to go into vertex mode. So right click, go to vertex. And I will start shaping this as I need. Here's the point. And I'll go ahead and do that again on this side. So move this. And you can see that we have the beginnings of this shape, but we don't have enough to get these little flaps over here or this little inlay here. To do that, I'm going to grab my multi-cut tool again. And I'm going to cut across. Now you can click and then right click. You can also hold down the middle mouse button and drag and add another line. So here, right around this little bend, I'm going to add another line. So to do that, of course, that is middle mouse click and drag. With these points, I'm going to move this one into position, move this one into position, this one, and this one. You can see that I have the shape starting to form, and I'm maintaining the rule that this is a quad. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. But I don't quite have the shape on the edge of the pedal here, so I'm going to move these up. I'm going to add one more cut. So I'm going to middle mouse click and drag, and I'll shape this up. Since polygons are always square, you need more of them to make something round looking. So there's my first pedal. I'm going to come over and do this to my second pedal. So I'm going to cut across, and one more, so 3 cuts. Okay. Now you can see that as we're making this, there are these middle points, and these middle points are sort of lonely. So I'm going to move them out just to the edge to fill in this circle area. So now it's time to work on the up and down part. I'm going to go up to my multi-cut tool, click there, click here. Start moving these into position. Three cuts. First one. The fold to the pedal. And then my last one up here. Let's go ahead and shape it. It's almost like playing connect the dots with 3D. So 3 cuts. So now we have our little flower shape made, and we are following the rule of quads, and the edge flow is pretty decent. There is this section here where it looks like it pinches, and visually it's not very appealing, but it does follow the rule. So if I go ahead and grab my face mode, and then I select this face, and then I double click here, you can see that it runs through. This entire edge row is continuous. And then this one, same deal, that's continuous. Select this one, hold shift, double click, that's continuous. Shift, double click, that's a continuous row. So it is following appropriate edge flow. Okay. I'm going to zoom out, and I will go into object selection, and I will select all of my objects here. And you can see each one of these has been created, and each one is a quad. And that will conclude our video for today. If you've liked it, of course, hit that like button and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.